Well, good evening and welcome to a special Monday edition of the R&R Sports Report. I am your host, Robert Hagan, and filling in for Mr. Randy Isabel again, my buddy from Jacksonville, Florida, Eric Watkins in the house. Eric, how you doing, buddy?
You know, it's a crazy week when the most underreported story is a soccer team potentially having beef with the national government.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave it at that.
It has been a crazy few things. We're going to talk a little bit about it. I know the idea of everything coming back here in 2026, I believe. Was that what I was reading? 2026. We'll talk a little soccer a little bit later. Can you believe we are 1 week away from football season ending? I'm just so sad.
I mean, the teams have arrived. They've touched down in Vegas. There's already issues. It's been months building up to this. We're a handful of days away. And then, aside from spring football fans, it's going to be a long, dark few months of off season.
Now, listen, you and I know this because we follow it.
Mm-hmm.
Our football love kind of, yes, it does end here, but it starts right back up in about a month. I even shared with one of my students today, as Ty's with us. Hello, Ty. One of our favorite times of the year is getting ready to start 1 month after Super Bowl's over. Both of us, and Randy included, our buddy Harry, all huge AFL fans. You're sporting your AFL. I didn't wear my Geelong jersey tonight or shirt today, but Aussie Rules football starts up in a month, and trying to explain to this young man, you think you want to watch regular football? Come watch a little Aussie Rules. It has changed my perspective on it.
Can we continue to spread the gospel? It's available on YouTube. There's explainers. There's highlights. There's matches. If you're going to go down any rabbit hole, go down the rabbit hole of Aussie Rules. Trust us on this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy time of shifting that direction into AFL and then the start of Major League Baseball. The bowling season has started. You want to talk a little NHL? I know All-Star Game it's a plethora of everything. And we're like next week, I know Randy is starting Idaho State with basketball. I start Washington State next week. I have a full slate game tomorrow, wrestling on Wednesday, another game on Thursday, and then we start playoffs next week. So it is going to be a crazy few days and all that. And so with that being said, we'll probably have Not sure. Probably going to be another Monday episode next week because of all of that going on. But we'll try to keep you in the loop with all of that. Let's hit a few things that we're going to talk about tonight besides what we've already talked about. Bad brackets. We had another release of our bad brackets. Well, I think by far, Mr. Watkins, our favorite one of the, at least my favorite one so far that we have done came out today. So make sure you go to search YouTube and go to Bad Brackets on YouTube. Watch the fast food chain, best fast food chain. I had a blast with that one.
So did I. Talking about my favorites, had some visual props, giving some love to some underrated places that I am sure are going to expand. You'll know exactly what I mean if you go ahead and watch the episode. Smell
I
not bitter.
I've been sharing it with my kids at school. Make sure you watch, tune into this one because actually I'm taking our bracket and I'm taking it to school. Hopefully next week, my kids will be doing the bracket for February. So we'll talk a little LCSC really quick and a little bit of local stuff here in the next hour, but. Gonna hopefully have one more friend jump in with us as we get ready to preview the Super Bowl. As we are just, like I said, 5 days, 6 days away from the Super Bowl. We'll also look at a few little things other in the NFL going on. Listen, the coaching carousel has been crazy over the last few days. So some things changed from what I thought was going to happen. So very shocked on a few of those. So we will get your take on that. So uh, lots to go. So let's jump in really quick. Let's talk a little bit of local stuff before we do. Some big names out of LCSC making splashes within the news with conference players of the week from the CCC. Friend of the show, Callie Stevens, won her fourth honor this season, her 11th of the career, taking athlete of the week. She averaged 22 points over the weekend, 29 against Eastern Oregon on Saturday, where she shot over 50% from the field. So unbelievable there. For the baseball team, two guys come out of that. Charlie Updegrave, the junior, had a huge weekend, led number 3 LCSC to a 3-1 record over in the East West Challenge. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Had 5 hits, 9 RBIs, and slugged over 727 for the tournament. LC fell to a team that is in your neck of the woods, sir. It's the Southeastern Fire, just a couple hours south of where you're at. Big NAIA team. They are still ranked number 1. So, and a shout out to pitcher of the week, junior Drake George. He got his first career honor as he pitched 4 2/3 shutout innings against Tennessee Wesleyan. So congrats to those LC Warriors with all that going on. We'll talk a little bit more LC stuff towards the end, talk about previews for this week in between all of our stuff. And but let's jump in to the NFL. And we're going to start first. Let's talk a little bit about all of the shenanigans before the Super Bowl. We'll preview the Super Bowl in a few minutes, but how about all these coaching things? And we hit a lot of coaching things last week, but some ones that shocked me was what happened in Washington and things went down this day. Washington hires Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn then fires Eric Bieniemy, who had only been with the team for 1 year with Ron Rivera, and then hires Cliff Kingsbury after Kingsbury was the main target of the Raiders. A little crazy going on there.
I'm a little bit confused about that because naturally, when you have a new coach, they want to come, they want to bring in their guys. That's part and parcel. But someone with a proven, especially offensive record like the enemy, someone you could get a lot of buy in from players, someone who you would want guiding the offensive ship because you know you're going to make a lot of changes. That's fine. His offense is very malleable, still very explosive, which is what you want, but you're not locked into a key draft strategy, be it quarterback or other position. Cliff Kingsbury, on the other hand, we saw what we did going all the way back to Texas Tech. Mediocre with great talent. Arizona, a lot of good talent, but again, iffy at times. Then going off to Thailand. But now with this, you know, high powered, a lot of passing, you have particular guys who need to fit those schemes, to fit what he does. And I don't think Washington is in a place right now to get that together. I'm I thought that all this would have gone away once Snyder left. Apparently, something that we still don't know about because I'm certainly confused.
Yeah, and you hit this on the head. It's a lot of things that shifted and changed, and what this organization has went through. And let's back it up. The last 10 years with
Mm-hmm.
name changes, ownership, the falling out between players, coaches, with ownership and Dan Schneider, to now, Ron Rivera, the maverick, the gambler, the guy that's going to take chances. And when they brought in Eric Bieniemy, I thought they were grooming him, literally grooming
Mm-hmm.
him to take over that position, and
Right.
to only give him one chance at it. You know what he was proven and what he had done in Kansas City. Eric has proved himself there, but it makes me lead down the conversation of, does everybody think he is more of still just a best OC, kind of like what Josh McDaniels was?
And that's something that, okay, if you're the best OC, even the best OCs are given opportunities to fail as a head coach. Josh McDaniels not once in Denver, but twice with the Raiders as well. So I can understand that philosophy. But given the landscape of the league, how it's geared toward offense, quarterback play, receivers, and passing, having someone like the enemy, you would want them to have a shot, especially for a team that's going to, as I mentioned before, rebuild. Expectations are low. You want to get something to bring fans in, and the enemy's offense would have been perfect for that. If he doesn't work out as a head coach, okay, you've lost nothing. You've proven maybe he's not the best head coach and best OC, but him even being denied the chance, that's what bothers me.
So, with that being said, and let's think about this for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Bieniemy now out on the market. Does a team take a chance with him, like Las Vegas, that needs a head coach? Do they jump on and really try to attack and get him now, or do you see him finding an offensive coordinator position somewhere in the NFL this upcoming season?
I don't necessarily know, especially since Antonio Pierce is rightfully locked in Vegas in the short term. However, if they're willing to go after Kingsbury as their OC, if I'm Mark Davis or anybody else in that Vegas staff, I go ahead and I get the enemy right now, even as OC. His time in the division with the Chiefs, knowing the styles, knowing the schemes, knowing who they're trying to keep in Vegas, you would think it's a bit of a lateral move, but I think have a good landing spot right now. And then when the coaching carousel opens up again this time next season, the enemy would have another shot with a potentially better team.
And I think you said something, and I'm just gonna double check and make sure I'm hearing you exactly right. He's if Vegas was to hire him right away,
Hmm.
and he knows those schemes, taking on Denver, taking on the Chargers. Could we honestly see a great matchup between Bieniemy and the new guy coming into Los Angeles with Jim Harbaugh?
I honestly think we would. Not to mention the matchups between the enemy's offense and what Harbaugh would get together in scheme on defense from his time winning a national championship at Michigan. The enemy against his former stalwart head coach in Andy Reid, showing who was really the man behind that system. That whole division could be nothing but glorious storylines next season if that happens. I'd be here for it.
Yeah, so this is far from over, especially with we'll have winter meetings here pretty quick, and as fast as the Super Bowl's over, we're going to be jumping right into everything that is the draft and what these teams move, and I'm looking to see a few more big coaching changes over the next few weeks. So now, with that being said, I have to take a deep sigh because this hurts so very much. And I mean, it hurts a ton. Baltimore has lost so many coaches over the last few days. Let's start with the big one. Ravens, Seattle ends up hiring uh, defensive coordinator Mike McDonald as the head coach there in Seattle. With that being said, now also Jay Harbaugh is signed as the special teams coach with Mike McDonald. So the Harbaugh clan, who Jay coached with Jim, father Jim for 5 years in Michigan, and then now he's going to be part of Mike McDonald, who comes from underneath John Harbaugh.
So who would have thought that the Harbaughs would have the beginnings of the next great coaching tree? And going from mostly strength to strength, because as we saw with Pete Carroll, especially in the early and middle years when we were making Super Bowl runs, it was the Legion of Boom. It was guided by defense, by takeaways, by big plays on that side of the ball. So I think in continuing that, building that Seattle defense is a great move. And again, another Harbaugh putting down the roots. I'm liking this. Now, Seattle still needs to get the right offensive hire and figure out what to do with Geno Smith, guys like Kenneth Walker. But making these choices, knowing how that division is laid out, wise move at the head coaching spot, potential surprise and sleeper pick on special teams. I'm going to be keeping my eye on them.
Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting seeing how things shift and change over the next couple weeks. Is like I said, I thought Cliff Kingsbury was a shoe in, as it was announced the other day that he was going to be going to uh, down to Las Vegas. So it's
Mm-hmm.
anything can happen, and we're proving and seeing that it will happen that way. So a couple other things again, like I said, the Ravens lost another DB quarter coach. He's going to go. Denard Wilson, who was the backs coach, is going to go and be the defensive coordinator in Tennessee. So that leaves a lot to happen, and so with all that happening, Zach Orr is going to be promoted by the Ravens to be the new DC. I'm excited to see where this guy, what he brings to it, as he has been a he knows the Raven way in Baltimore.
Yeah, you've got your defense in particular in very safe hands. I wouldn't be too worried. There might be a step back, but overall, you still got those levels of tenacity, and as you said it, the Raven way. That's going to be beneficial, and that's going to be better on the players because it's a much easier transition from a guy like Orr in house to going over ahead and putting his imprint on this defense.
Other moves: Green Bay hires a Boston College head coach Jeff Halfley as their defensive coordinator. A little shocked with this one.
Yeah, with how BC has done the past couple of years in particular, their defense at best has been eh, especially in the ACC. Granted, there's been some flashes, but maybe because you have someone, college coach, working with a young team and a young defense, that might be why this was the direction of the hire. So I can understand it in that way. But overall, I'm not calling it a whiff, but I'm calling it a head scratcher.
Yeah, head scratcher would be uh, far from what I would have thought with this team, and it's just crazy to see where Green Bay is going and what they're thinking about and all this. And then also New York Giants sign Shane Bowen as the defensive coordinator. He's following Wink Martindale, so can he be uh, very uh, how do I want to say this? He's going to be on the heels of Brian Dable, and
Exactly.
he's going to do what Dable tells him. I think Wink had his own ideas of how that defense should run.
Yeah, and that's the problem. When you have a very solid DC and a head coaching candidate in his own right in Wink, you're going to butt heads with the guy in charge. And as we saw, when you have two alphas butting heads, it doesn't work for the organization and it shows. So I get it. But the thing is, yes, he's going to listen and respect Coach Dayball, but is he going to go so far as it being a yes man, especially when things aren't working? The Giants at times call it for what it is, mildly. They weren't the best of defenses in the league. You got to show some sort of improvement. Are you willing to go ahead and still show that improvement or just be something of a lapdog? Ah, that could go one of two ways. And Giants fans are going to find out which way fairly quickly, good or bad.
So, with that being said, we said Eric Bieniemy's name. I'm going to throw one other name out there. I know of pretty much what two jobs that are still left open. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders still open. We also have things. I believe New Orleans Saints, is that still? I don't think they've done anything there yet.
Not not that I'm aware of.
So the other name that's still out there, Bill Belichick. Do we see him, or is it time for him to finally ride off into the sunset into Florida and start playing golf?
I don't know necessarily if he's going to be down here playing golf. If anything, he's probably going to retire somewhere in the DMV or Northeast and follow lacrosse, which would be great because I think it's time. I have heard multiple things saying Belichick, good as a coach, but so many teams are worried he's going to want the level of power and total control like he had with the Patriots. And given the last few years, as New England has been on a downside, teams are extremely hesitant to give it to him. They want someone else that he can answer to. The fact that he hasn't found a job means I'm going to take some or give some credence to those and say, hey, he still wants too much power. He's still set in his ways. And if he knows that he's not going to get it, which he's not, don't just take a year off like everyone else. Wait for the market to settle itself. Just lacrosse season is around the corner. You've got the PLL going into home markets and everything. Johns Hopkins is going to rebound, have a better season. Relax and enjoy. Go to this phase of your life, Bill. Love you. Thank you. So long.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's one of the greatest coaches. I don't know if I put him number one yet. as he's still chasing Don Shula. So it's one of those catch-22s. It's like comparing the same thing of comparing who's the greatest basketball player of all time. You can't quite do it because of the eras and how they played. So we'll
Right.
see how that one pans off. Some other news, one that I just saw prior to us coming on air, and it was told today by Roger Goodell that the Philadelphia Eagles will host the first regular season football game for 2024 in Brazil. I, I think we're in that process. We're going to start seeing these teams spreading out, and we get bigger conferences. How do you feel about them starting in Brazil this year?
Ah, bem-vindos a Brasil, Rio de Janeiro. Honestly, I am excited. I'm already seeing the teasers for the Super Bowl commercial in Ghana. As much as I love a lot of the European markets, we saw in your Latin American countries and in South America something that's untapped and it worked well with Mexico City. You have big venues. I'm ecstatic to see, is the feel really there? Are the fandoms really there? It's going to be a fun party style event, which the NFL loves, and fans are going to have a great experience. And if it turns out to be, hey, you've got gridiron football fans in that region, all the better. Another place where you can expand. So I'm applauding Goodell, something I almost never do, for reaching out to these markets because he's thinking ahead, and I appreciate that.
So let's talk the last one of other news, and then we'll swing into it. I kind of laughed about this when I read it. Le'Veon Bell to make an appearance back in the NFL, maybe with Pittsburgh again.
I know why he wants to do it. Because he wishes that he had never left, and I get it. Yes, he doesn't have any tread on the tires because he's been doing, nothing the last couple of seasons, but at the same time, the Steelers organization where it is right now, we don't know how much longer Tomlin's going to be at the helm. We don't know how the offense is going to be sorted because Arthur Smith of all people, as their OC. Maybe he feels like it's prime that he could come back and revitalize to help the organization save face. But it would be even worse if he comes back, makes the team, and then does terrible. Or if he doesn't even make the team. It's too much risk, potential reward, but
Mhm.
no. I think the ship has sailed.
This past weekend was the Pro Bowl. Did you have any chance to watch anything? We do know, and the NFL comes back again, or NFC comes back again, and knocks off the AFC in a last second with like a minute left of the flag football game. Did you watch any of the skills or the game?
I watched almost all of the skills challenges. I am very mad that they put kick tack toe during the pregame because I tuned right to ABC, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. They were starting with the first quarter of the game, which I like the fact that they changed it up to have the game and then have events interspersed in between. Great move. There may or may not have been a little ref ball as I was explaining the things with my flag football refereeing experience. It may have been a little dodgy fourth quarter, I'll say that, but seeing the skills competition and especially the gridiron gauntlet on Sunday, that was one of my favorites. Had some great dodgeball games on Thursday. I have to say, the NFL continues to do this right. For everybody that poo poos on the Pro Bowl, these Pro Bowl games are perfect.
Yeah, I did not have a chance to go. I'm going to go and hopefully watch them on YouTube tonight after we're done with all of our stuff. Big event for the PBA bowling as the U.S. Open happened this week. We'll talk a little bit about that. So my attention went. I'm going to go watch that a little bit, and we'll talk about that stacked roster here in a little bit. But hopefully, get caught up on the Pro Bowl and all of that. So, all right, sir. It is time. Let's talk a little bit of preview for Super Bowl 58 and kick things off. Just kind of the big story that has started out today. Tomorrow is the main media day, but today, main story comes out of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and the field conditions down there. Last week, the NFL came in and sodded over the top of the turf there at UNLV, and some major issues and footing issues have really got the San Francisco 49ers all worked up.
We've seen what can go wrong when you have to redo a field in certain conditions. Now, granted, up until the past couple of days, conditions in Nevada have been fine. Vegas has been spared from a lot of this worst of the system, so you don't have to deal with those. However, putting sod over turf, you don't get quite that level of compactness. Nothing necessarily sticks right away. So that leads to an abhorrently soft field. I was reading an article about this on ESPN where your average NFL hardness index for the field is 78. Nothing below a 70. So you're going to get good grip. You don't need a lot of really long spikes on your cleats to try to go ahead and get traction. The field at UNLV that they're using was measured in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
The 50s. And with all the things that came out about with last year during the Super Bowl, needing to change cleats, getting footing, how is a team going to reliably prepare when you need 6 or 7 different types of cleats for the week before the game itself? I get with inspections and stuff, but somebody dropped the ball in a big way.
And you said that. Why would you put it over the top of turf, knowing that Allegiant Stadium has Bermuda grass? And they've
Mhm.
talked about it, made it quite well known that it is that type of material underneath your feet. Why are we not doing a a high school or something like that? I have been around Las Vegas. Henderson, a lot of those communities around it. There are a lot of high schools around that area that they could have easily went
Mhm.
in, and the NFL could have covered up uh, some of these fields at a high school and made it so much better of a field than to try to. You get nothing that's going to compact on artificial. It made 0 sense.
No, it didn't. I mean, I don't know if there were other factors in play, like with the size of the facility, accommodations. I could get that to a point, but even then, I go all the way back to Super Bowl 39 here in Jacksonville. The Eagles, they practice right at Hodges Stadium at UNF. Designed for soccer, they put up uprights, everything, practice facilities. Nobody said a word. Granted, a lot of students, like myself at the time, were tempted to try to sneak around and watch them practice and everything.
Oh,
But yeah,
who
but
does?
they
Who
were,
doesn't?
exactly. But for something like that, it's like, hey, they know the type of field at the stadium. These are the types of fields. No issues. So the fact that, as you said, if there's plenty of high schools, getting top ones, Bishop Warman, all of that, with comparable facilities to UNLV, not just field, but other stuff, especially for just a week, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Some other things that I would talk a little bit about. Both of us are huge into watching numbers, how games change. They are saying some of the biggest bets and things are starting to come through. Uh, at the sports books in Las Vegas, especially with it being down there, could we see some major bets come across that shake up some of these hotels down in Las Vegas?
I wouldn't say shake up just yet because you're already starting to see your whales come in. A lot of high five figure, six figure, seven figure bets. These are the types of events and the types of action that the casinos and sportsbooks in Vegas specifically plan for. Now, are you going to see maybe an eight figure bet? I wouldn't be surprised over the next few days as we get towards the weekend, but it's not going to be anything too significant, especially in terms of actually moving the line. And that's what you want to look out for. If
Mhm.
it's big enough action to shift the line, even if it's just a half a point, that's when you know, hey, either a sharp, a huge whale, something coming in to shift the balance. But I don't think we're going to get that dramatic. So they may be sweating a bit early on, especially with some of these prop bets, but thankfully, nothing as bad as what's going on in Canada, where you have all of your Taylor Swift specials.
Yeah, you said prop bets. I was trying to find some of them that have been going across right now. Uh, I right about a half hour ago, the line was 1.5 for the Niners. So the dogs coming in. So many different prop bets. Between interceptions, who scores first, rushing touchdowns. It's got to the chance of there are so many different things that people are going to make bets on, and it's just crazy to see where the public starts to put their money.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Whereas with everybody keen in the gambling circuit, look at the sharps. Where's the late money moving? The insiders. It's also wise to see where the public is at because a lot of times these sharps will go along with the public or completely go ahead and prove them wrong for reasons. So it's easy, safer bets, as it were, with a lot of your big name players in situations. But then if you really want to go ahead and get degenerate, you've got all kinds of stuff, not just first touchdown, results of the first drive, who scores, etc., etc. You get into some of my favorites, like the Gatorade color. How many people are betting on the coin toss? I still haven't heard anything as far as the national anthem. I need to get together for our own parlay that we're setting up here
Mhm.
so that way I can get the time on that and who's seeing
So,
for that matter.
well, with that being said, I do have them brought up. CBS Sports has them posted with all of their other ones. Coin toss again. That always an even one with that. But the national anthem right now being sung by country music legend Reba McEntire. Right now,
Ooh.
the over under is 90.5 seconds.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yes,
whoa.
very, very short compared to last year's Chris Stapleton. Was it last year, Chris Stapleton? I think it was last year. Was or a year before was Chris Stapleton. Um, but I know it went over 2 minutes last year, so crazy with that one. Uh, Another one prop bet that I did here, Usher's halftime show. The number of songs played over under is 8.5 on that one.
Mmm.
Another one is the chances of collaborations. With it being in Las Vegas, I like the over on this one at 2.5, just because of where it's located. Um, right now, I laugh about this one. Plus 200, sir, if the first song performed is Yeah. I think that is probably going to be a pretty good chance of that one happening. And
The
you,
fact that it's only plus 200, you're going to see that number go down a lot because if you look at his discography, his hits, that is your best opener, especially if he's going to hit the over on 8.5 songs. So Yeah, expect some money to come in on that one.
And our favorite one, like you said it a few minutes ago, it has to be the Gatorade poured on the coach. Right now, plus 260 is red and pink. That is leading right now. Purple is at plus 330 and green is at plus 400. I want to say it was blue last year, was it not, sir?
It was, and I got a tip on this from a friend of mine. You look at the most common colors that Gatorade has, and that don't involve a lot of extra powder. So, like your reds, your white, your clear. Now, granted, one thing that I'm factoring in are team colors. They're both on the red, white, and gold in particular for the Chiefs. So this is another one to where very safe bet to go with red on this one. That's a more likely candidate. I don't think they're going to go out of the box again with something like a blue.
Yeah, last year's blue right now sitting at plus 460. But with that being said, we're just at Monday. And
Mm-hmm.
after we've got media day tomorrow and everything else that happens by Saturday, some of these numbers are going to be quite crazy. I love some of the prop bets. I got to quit betting on the coin flip because I have lost the coin flip every year for the last 4 years.
Tails never fails, as the saying goes.
You would think that would be a true statement, but it has bit me in the backside a few times. So we will see how those turn out. All right, sir. Let's talk some numbers. Let's talk who has the edge in some of these categories going into the game. And I was hoping that Robert Taylor would join us, but he's got some commitments. He might pop in, he might chime in the comments down below. But let's start first. Let's deal with the defense, some team comparisons, and all these numbers that I'm going to throw out at you. I feel like they are very comparative a ton, and these are regular season numbers. And I want you to give me where you lean, whether it is Kansas City or San Francisco going into this game. So let's start defense and go that way
Okay.
right now. Kansas City allowed right at 289 yards per game, while San Francisco defense allowed 303 yards per game. Pretty evenly matched. Where you see the significant difference in that is the rushing category. San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco only allowing 89 yards per game compared to Kansas City's 113. Who wins this battle in the Super Bowl with yards per game in that?
Especially when it comes to rushing, I am leaning towards San Francisco. And I've seen this not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs. If you've got a good running back and you can get momentum, especially in the first half, ripping off a couple consecutive good carries, it puts Kansas City on the back foot because they're much more reliant on their secondary. The front seven, however, it's tough to establish momentum on the ground against San Francisco. And if I'm looking at someone like, all right, Christian McCaffrey against the Chiefs front seven, or Pacheco versus the Niners front seven, I'm picking McCaffrey to have a better day, especially in the first half, as they're going to want to put pressure off Brock Purdy. But I think that front seven for San Francisco is going to be salivating. Even though there's been a lot of changeover, they're going to want to look and say, okay, we had the momentum and had the lead early on in Super Bowl 54. We want to not only keep that again, but keep it throughout the game. So making Kansas City much more one dimensional is going to be a target. And I trust the Niners front seven on defense to work towards accomplishing that.
Let's talk. I love you brought this up. Let's talk about that really quick. And that front seven for San Francisco is big names. You got Chase Young, Eric Armstead, Hargrave, Bosa, Greenlaw, Fred
Mm-hmm.
Warner. I bring up
Mm-hmm.
Fred Warner late, but Fred Warner, Ward, and Burks. You look at that, and then you look at the comparisons of the front seven for the Kansas City Chiefs. You've got Karlaftis, you've got Farrell Jones, Dana Gay. Hopefully, he is good to go. Right now, he is not on the injured report. Nick Bolton and Tranquil. I mean, very comparable teams of both of the front sevens.
Yeah, comparable when it comes to that individuality. But this is also goes to defensive schemes. Steve Spagnuolo sacrifices a little bit of that run to use that power on the front seven to blitz, blitz heavy, then let the secondary shut everything down on the back end. While that could be very effective against someone like Purdy, again, if you take the pressure off, use your backs effectively in the first quarter, like Shanahan is going to do, you're going to have a lot better rushing stats early on from the Niners. So, comparable talent used in much different ways.
So, with that being said, I'm going to share this with you. And why I say they are very comparable is the fact that Kansas City have 125 QB hits compared to San Francisco's 122. So I mean, you're within 3 QB hits of each other. Yes, Kansas
Mhm.
City has a few more sacks with uh, with Gay and Karlaftis and those guys. They got to the quarterback 57 times in the regular season compared to 48 times by San Francisco. And like you bring up, I think they are very comparable. They are very much going to be the same as what this team can do. Now we said that and we talk a little bit about it. Let's talk about the opposite where I think San Francisco I think is a little bit better at, and that's the takeaways. They come
Mhm.
away with 28 takeaways during the regular season compared to Kansas City 17. That ball club loves to go after and strip the ball.
They absolutely do. And that's where, going back, a lot of those same designs in different ways. The quarterback hits from San Francisco come from aggression. Get to the guy who has the ball, find the ball, seek the ball. And that's why it's not just their secondary, but their front seven generated a lot of those takeaways. Whereas with Kansas City, it's all right. Your secondary is blanketing the receivers. No one's open. There goes the quarterback. No one's open. Soft box. There goes your running back all of a sudden. Things like that. And again, Steve Spagnuolo and his blitzes. So with that, I think the level of aggression will be higher and more consistent with San Francisco to where you may get a first quarter takeaway. You would probably most certainly get a first half takeaway, seize that momentum like I was discussing. Whereas I'm not going to say entirely bad or entirely needing to change things up, but Spags better have some extra ideas. One or two, just in case.
Well, listen, we talked about it last week reviewing that game against Baltimore. Yes, Baltimore shot themselves in the foot with some stupid plays, but Spags brought the pressure, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
He's blitzing 50% of the time from where he was at during the regular season of right at the 40% mark. So, he is very smart with that, and I see that same thing happening. So here's where I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you to lean and tell me who do you favor more in the defensive side? Do you lean it a little bit more to San Francisco or to Kansas City going into this game?
Just barely San Francisco. I trusted them more going through a lot. And again, with the level of consistency, not having to rely on certain situations to make splash plays. going up against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, you're going to need that style of defense. Granted, Kansas City will have some defensive moments of their own, but on a whole, holistic level, San Francisco has a narrow edge to me.
Yeah, I think by far we talked about it with all those numbers, what they have done in the regular season. I think they are very close to it. I'm going to have to agree with you. I think it's just the level of physicality that comes out of that San Francisco team might be the difference. Now, if Willie Gay is 100% healthy, if Chris Jones can get to Brock Purdy, this might be a whole different story by the
Absolutely.
second quarter, if not the second half. So I think it's going to be a close game with this guy. So we got Eric saying just a little bit to the San Francisco side. So that's where we're going to go. All right, let's turn our attention to the offensive side. And we look at the offense. I think with the biggest, almost 50-yard difference, total yards per game. And I know a tough part about it was Kansas City struggled a little bit early in these games,
Mm-hmm.
earlier in the year. Kansas City averaging 351 yards per game compared to San Francisco averaging 398 yards per game. It is crazy to think about where those go, and part of that goes to the quarterbacks. You look at the passing game of uh, Kansas City. Yes, we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. That is really good. He is currently the regular season. He was sixth in yards with 4,100, eighth in TD passes with 27. He was sacked 60 or 27 times, but he had a QBR of 63, which ranked him eighth. Oh, I mean, with the season that he had some hiccups, but it went downhill. Now let's look at Brock Purdy. Mahomes averaged 246. Brock Purdy averaged 257. He was fifth in yards, 4280. So he's 100-yard more than Mahomes. He was number three in touchdown passes with four more touchdown passes than Mahomes at 31. Purdy was sacked one more time at 28, but his QBR was at 72.7, which ranked him number one. Purdy greater than Mahomes?
Had a better season, yes, but in this instance, no. And I'm looking at everything like put together. If you looked at Brock Purdy's best games, that's when the team was at their healthiest. Healthy CMC, healthy Debo Samuel, everybody around him. You take those pieces away, Purdy looked human. Absolutely human. And were times it was just downright terrible seeing a guy who's still a second year player who's Mr. Irrelevant. With Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, you mentioned all those stats where he was top 10 and his top receiver was Rice. They had Kadarius Toney. They had MVS, who didn't really catch fire until late in the season. Still, with all of that, he had a top 10 year. Mahomes, big advantage, especially in this game where he's been there before, knows what to do. And I'm worried that, especially after the first half against Detroit, the lights are going to be a bit too bright for Purdy. And that's what I'm really going to question. Had a good path getting there, but for Mahomes, this was just cake. And in a familiar stadium, too. Sorry, Mahomes, big advantage. Robert Taylor, you're welcome.
Yeah, I think you got to lean that way. But what Brock Purdy did, what he can do with Debo Samuels and keeping those guys in there, getting the ball to Kittle, it just
Mm-hmm.
will. I think we lean a little. I lean a little bit Mahomes, kind of like you. So right now. still balanced. I think it's
Oh
close.
yeah.
I think they get there. Purdy, I think maybe a little bit more moving around the pocket. It'll be interesting to see. All right, let's look at rushing. And with that being said, you look at the guy um, rushing the ball offensively. Kansas City rushes the ball 140 times. San Francisco numbers were down a little bit just because, like you said, McCaffrey was hurt 104. But you look at the big part about it. Let's look at individual. Christian McCaffrey just short of 1,500 yards rushing. And then you look at Pacheco right at 935 during the regular season. Now you look at things here in the postseason. Pacheco is leading the way right now with 254 yards. He has become the workhorse for this
Hmm.
Kansas City team, but Christian McCaffrey hasn't had to do a ton because of what Purdy is doing, throwing the ball, rush the ball, for 100. McCaffrey for 188 yards. So still getting 4 touchdowns by McCaffrey compared to Pacheco's 3.
Yeah, and this is the thing about when it comes to running styles. Pacheco runs angry, very angry. And if you need a quick 3, 5 yard burst, if they're putting 8 in the box or something like that, yes, Pacheco is great for those runs. But he's not necessarily overly explosive in breaking those into long runs for touchdowns. While McCaffrey isn't as explosive initially, a lot of his yardage will come after first contact. He won't necessarily go bust over and break through, but he's a bit more effective, a bit more patient. And then if you get him out in the open, he's gone. And he loves to get out into that open space. With something like this, especially when you're trying to keep Mahomes off the field and try to get more points as well, I'm giving the edge to McCaffrey in San Francisco's rushing attack in this case.
I think both of these guys get close to that 100 yards in
Mm-hmm.
this game, even with the defenses the way that they have played this year. I think both of these guys, Pacheco and CMC, get right at 100. If not, I think CMC ends up with 2 touchdowns, Pacheco with 1. So it will be interesting in that one. So that goes to the giveaway category of this. And San Francisco has only given up the ball 18 times on the offensive side compared to the giveaways of Kansas City at 28. With that being said, do you see the defense of San Francisco keeping the disruption and keeping Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes throwing some wild passes?
Early on, yes. It's going to be another one of those first halves to where everybody's going to be a bit rattled. San Francisco because they want to get an early lead and keep that. Kansas City because they want to get after Brock Purdy. But if you're looking at these situations, while Mahomes can make a lot of magic, sometimes that magic will bite you. And I see Kansas City with a giveaway a little bit more likely than I do with San Francisco. San Francisco is going to want to be all about ball control, and it could lead to some safe, somewhat boring play calling, especially early, but it's going to work in their favor if it goes that way.
Yeah, so you saying that. So do you think Kyle Shanahan then is going to play more protective football, or do you see him going explosive quick to see if he can catch a big play right off the bat?
If he doesn't try to go for a big play in the first 2 drives, 3 at the most, he's not going to in the first half. He is going to say, all right, Kansas City defensively is giving us this. Now, if they get a go ahead and get a bit more pressure, they're going to rely on Purdy's mobility, which he shows up that he has. And if you can get a Samuel or an Ayuk or a Kittle open 20 yards in the air, hey, perfect, done. But if they're banking on that and it doesn't happen, then you're going to see that grind down the clock, 6, 7 minute drives. So it's really going to be the first two drives of the game. And I don't think Spags is going to blitz that that early. So you'll see a bit more protection, protective play calling from Shanahan.
Yeah. So the last category of part of this is what these teams are averaging, putting up points per game. Right now, San Francisco averaging just over 4 touchdowns per game at 28 points. Kansas City right at the 3 touchdown thing. We haven't talked about them, but let's compare the 2 tight ends. Kittle, you've got Kittle, you have Travis Kelce. What Kelce did to start off that game against Baltimore, probably one of the best starting set in playoff history. Now that he has surpassed Jerry Rice, the GOAT of all
Mm-hmm.
receivers, do you see him making another huge impact, or do you think that Fred Warner and that defensive group really clamped down on Travis Kelce?
They're going to try to clamp down on Kelsey. But if you see someone like him who converts targets into catches, and that's exactly what he does, if you put it anywhere near him, he's going to try to muscle and get the ball. While they're going to try to generate those matchups, I think Andy Reid and his mind in particular is saying, all right, which linebacker are they going to put on Kelsey? Let's run through that in practice. How can we get these mismatches, especially when our slot receiver, our number 2, our Y, our Z aren't open? That's going to play to Kelsey's advantage because he's going to want to have another big game. He'll probably need another big game for those receiver deficiencies, and he's going to start out with a great game. So to me, I'm expecting a much harder start from Kelsey, and then that will take the pressure off, especially in the second half. Then as they try to clamp down on him, your other receivers are going to go to work.
So I'm going to say this. We said some big names here, and I'm going to ask you of these 2 receiving cores, a name of one of the guys that from both teams that doesn't get a lot of notoriety because they're not the big name on that team. But let's look at it. Brandon Ayuk was 7th in total yards, and what Rice is doing for Kansas City the last 8 games, including the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. Who has the bigger impact on these 2 ball clubs?
I'm going to say Ayuk because if you leave Ayuk open, which at times early on, if you don't factor him, you can, he will burn you because of all the other talent that they have. You can't focus on everyone. Rice, I think, will be more limited because he has established himself as a high end number 2 and in Kansas City's current offense, the number 1 receiver. He's going to get the attention because Kansas City's other receivers have shown, hey, unless it's extreme circumstances, we can't beat you. So this is setting up wonderfully for Ayuk. Probably not 100-yard game, but if I'm looking 9, 10 o'clock Eastern time Sunday night and say, all right, he's got 75 touchdown, 80 yards at a touchdown, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever from Ayuk.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is what some of these guys that don't get enough of the play calls, and they're sprinkling things in there. You know, like we said, Travis Kelsey, 262 yards just here in the postseason compared to what he's doing. You look at some of the other names up there, Rashee Rice, 930 yards, 7 touchdowns in the regular season. You also look at this team from San Francisco, as I'm clicking through here. Ayuk, like I said, he was in the top spot there. Um, I clicked the wrong one here. You look at Brandon Ayuk, 1,300 yards. Kittle, 1,020. So, with that being said, Debo Samuel, 892.
Mm-hmm.
Do we lean San Francisco in the receiving, or are you going to lean Kansas City in the receiving?
I've said it all throughout the show. I'm sticking to it. I like San Francisco's receiving core more, deeper, more versatile, better in situations this year than I do Kansas City's. And I know, given their cap space and everything else, win or lose, that's going to be the first thing that the Chiefs address, getting an upgrade at wide receiver. San Francisco, they're just going to worry about being able to keep everybody they got.
Mm-hmm. All right, sir, we've come to that point. It is time for you to finally make your pick. We will post our picks on the R&R Sportsbook Facebook page on Friday. We'll post those on Friday. Hopefully, if we can figure out, Facebook keeps taking polls down, puts polls up. They've taken them away from pages again. So hopefully we can get a page in there to let everybody know who we're taking. We know who our buddy Robert Taylor is taking. He is going to take Kansas City. So the ball, sir, is in your court. Who wins Super Bowl 58?
San Francisco has a lot to prove. I've already talked about the narrative. They win, they finally get over the hump. If they lose, they're going to continue to be in that microscope, getting close and close, but not getting the job done. And now, with the Chiefs, it would be twice. For Kansas City, they're in Vegas. They've been there before. This is their fourth time in 5 years, and the fourth time in Mahomes' career already, 6 years deep, that they're playing the last Sunday of the NFL season. If they win, so
7 years.
seven. Yeah, well, including the 1 year he wasn't a starter, but yeah. If they win, we're talking dynasty. We're talking, are they the new Patriots? If they lose, it'll just be, man, they did all of that. Imagine if they had better receivers and better this and better that, but nothing's going to be really bad about them. You're giving me that team knowing those narratives as an underdog, even though, as I have said, San Francisco has got better talent in a few areas of the ball. I'm taking the Chiefs. They were inevitable. I'd already bet against them once in the playoffs this season. It bit me. When you've got a team that's got nothing to lose, they don't lose. I'm taking the Chiefs.
That you hit on it a few minutes ago. A couple of things. Yes, San Francisco is favored by 1.5 right now. It is still early. We talked about that in the betting things. Uh, Two things I am going to add to this narrative. We haven't said his name in our explanation here, but it is of Andy Reid. This man has proved himself. He has shown what he can do, what he has done with this team this year. With the games that they lost, they were able to bounce back and get key wins in that one. They've adjusted, they've adapted. Spags has changed things up. Am I still bitter over last week because I still think, and we can still argue this with Robert Taylor and the other Sanford or the other Kansas City fans. I've heard it all week at school, this past week of what Baltimore, what happened. Listen, we shot ourselves in the foot. Do I think Baltimore was the better team? 1,000% better team. I think just the way they did, they got away from what they should have done. I've admitted that. I've moved on for that. With that being said, though, even though Andy Reid is up there in the GOAT list, Kyle Shanahan has proven something with what he can do with Christian McCaffrey, what they did to get him into San Francisco, what Debo has done when he is on the field has been nothing short of magnificent, catching the ball, running the ball from different spots. George Kittle, um, Kyle Juszczyk. Then you look on that defensive side. I think San Francisco is way too much. They cover. I think that San Francisco wins by a touchdown. So give me San Francisco. That is my pick. Uh, we don't have Randy's pick tonight, so you will all find out on on Friday when we post those on there. So, and listen, I'm going to catch a lot of flack for that pick, but I think it proved what how the roller coaster happened with Kansas City this season. Are they beatable? Yes. Same with San Francisco. They're also beatable. Baltimore went into San Francisco and beat them. So it is what it is, and I think it's going to be a great game. I would be very shocked if it doesn't. Maybe it's less than a 7 point win, but I think it's right at a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm thinking even narrower. It's probably going to be another moment, minute and a half to go. Niners driving, ball is in Brock Purdy's hands, touchdown to win. Kansas City just makes that play. They do. And if it's offensively, you don't want to give Mahomes time, no matter what the game, no matter what the circumstance. You don't want to leave any time on the clock. He will burn you. And I think with those factors, Kansas City, I would say by 4. I think it's a bit more than a field goal, but not much more.
And we'll make sure we do put our spreads on the R&R Sports Report page. We'll do that on, like I said, on Friday. So we've got Eric Watkins taking Kansas City winning by 4. I am going to take San Francisco winning by 7, and then we'll get Randy's on there on Friday, and will go from there. That was our Super Bowl 58 preview. Lots in there, lots of numbers, all of that. You guys are listening to the R&R Sports Report here on the R&R Facebook page or YouTube channel. Make sure you give us a shout out or any of those things, and check out all the other things that we're all doing. We're doing bad brackets, sir. Eric Watkins, you're doing lots of things right now too.
Yeah, bad brackets. I'm here trying to get a couple things in the works. I'm talking to the right people to potentially resurrect Point of Viewer at some point. I've got a lot of machinations going on, but other than that, getting more active on X at Squid Sports Head. I'm popping around a few places, just trying to pop around a few more in between all of my different tutoring and now fling golf adventures, which, oh, I can see why so many people love golf. And seriously, if you ever wanted to try golf, but you were worried about all the bonuses with the clubs and this and that, go to flinggolf.com, get yourself a stick, practice on the range. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, it's my favorite time of the year. The wife and I were actually talking about clubs. I broke a couple of my clubs this last year. I've had the same set of irons for 25 plus years, the same driver for close to 30 years. So it's time to do a little changing and upgrade. So yeah, time to get out and do that. All right, let's dive just a little bit into the Major League Baseball. Some big things over the last couple of days. I think the biggest one, and a guy that I picked last year, and I should have stayed with him as one of those impact players. Bobby Witt Jr. gets paid in Kansas City with the Royals, signs a huge $288 million deal for 11 years in Kansas City. Was this a smart move by the Royals?
The fact that for all we've seen with lengthy contracts, this one on the much cheaper end, I like this. You're giving him the stability, knowing he's going to get his money. But if we get to a year 5, year 6, things still don't work, it's not clicking in Kansas City for whatever reason, it's not going to be a hard piece to move. Right on that line, this was good, especially for one of your smaller markets like Kansas City. This was a good deal.
Yeah, Gold Glover,
Mm-hmm.
almost the third, almost a 30-50 man, 30 home runs, 49 stolen bases. Uh, yeah, the power number wasn't all there, only batting 276, but what he was doing for this team has been incredible. And I told Randy last year, I said, you really got to watch what happens there in that one. So, also, how about the Dodgers move on from Caleb Ferguson to the Yankees? That's got to make Mr. Randy happy.
Well, of course, because they've already got their talent. They've already got a super team. And when you have guys like Ferguson who are surplus for requirements, I'm not incredibly worried because even with the Yankees, Randy's going to be happy. We're still going to be taking care of business in Tampa Bay. But overall, good move for, yes, Randy, you're getting their scraps. Enjoy their scraps. Thank you
Well,
very much.
well, with that being said, Seattle has been moving a lot, and they have proved it this year. I think they listened. I think Jerry Dipoto finally listened to what the fans were saying, and they have made some big moves over this year. Another one happened a couple days ago with the Mariners and the White Sox. As Seattle's got a great farm system, they've been
Mm-hmm.
proving it as they've moved away from it. But the White Sox traded Gregory Santos to the Mariners for a couple of other guys, Prelander Baroa and Zach Deloach, and a pick in the 2024 draft. I think it's a great move to get a guy in there that is one of those good relievers.
Absolutely, because when you're looking at the AL West, Seattle's got one of a few powerful lineups in that division. But as you get later in the games, and especially later in the games, sixth, seventh, eighth inning later in the season, and you're trying to get those particular matchups or someone who can get you some key outs, Santos can be one of those guys. So this is Seattle shoring up. We've got the offense. Now we need to make moves on the pitching. Oh, they're giving me hope. They should be giving you hope too.
Yeah, and the other and probably most notable move that happened just a couple days ago, Orioles inked one of the biggest starters in rotation, Corbin Burns. This team just gets better and better.
they Baltimore, with all of their drama off the field and only a little bit on it, it's scary to know how they were just a couple pieces away, an ace, hit here or there, from doing damage in this beast of a division. So they realize, hey, we've got the office business taken care of. We need to seize the East. It's annoying for me because I'm going to have mixed emotions, but they're feeling dangerous and they just might. No, no, no. I can't say it yet. I can't say it yet. I don't want to say it yet because it's going to be real and it's going to happen. But you can probably use your imagination and fill in that sentence.
Let's go jump in really quick before we go to back to Las Vegas with what's going on in the busy town of Las Vegas. Couple of big things. Talk a little NHL All Stars there, sir. Has been tough to try to stay on top of the National Hockey League.
All right. I'm first to admit, in recent years, especially in the 3-on-3 format, no matter how they've tried with the different divisions, setting up with the tournament and everything, my Panthers might be cursed. Connor McDavid felt the effects of that, losing in Toronto, granted, to Team Austin Matthews, winning the All Star final, stealing it up, beating up poor Bobrovsky. It was a great game. But between the revamped game, which I like, and the skills competition, which I didn't get to catch this year, but was very good, you stuck to the basics. It's an event that we're not going to see for a while, and here's why. Gary Bettman, listening to everyone, for once in his career, has said, all right, we're going to get the insurance, everything else straightened out, and for at the very least, Milan Cortina 2026, presumably Salt Lake City, barring some other miracle in 2030, the NHL is going to return to the Winter Olympics. But wait, there's more. I'm in Ron Popilia, and if you know, we are best friends. Bettman's like, all right, I've got bigger plans in the works. Everybody liked the World Cup of Hockey. We can control the World Cup of Hockey, NHL arenas, and everything else. We're bringing that back, and they're going to alternate. So every even year, players are going to participate in either a Winter Olympics or a World Cup of Hockey, with Bettman aiming for the first edition in 2028. So you're only going to see All-Star games in odd-numbered years, except for 2025. Plans are still being hashed out, but there's going to be what is called a four nations face-off. The US, Canada, Sweden, and Finland in a mini tournament mid-February 2025, replacing All-Star Weekend. Games will be held in one Canadian city and one US city. Simple round robin, NHL rules, top two in the final, kind of whetting the appetite for the Winter Olympics and everything else. Bold moves, but I think with how receptive fans were, including myself, to the World Cup of Hockey and to Olympic hockey, Bettman's doing something right for once. Again, something else I don't get to say too often.
Like I said, lots of things going on in NHL moving, and you did bring up soccer, so let's hit on it for real quick. A lot of news coming out, but especially as the 2026 World Cup finals and World Cup venues were announced. United States getting some big and some mad props.
They are. And for all the talk with Stan Kroenke and SoFi, LA, oh, we're going to be a host city. We're not going to be a host city. We're going to be a host city. It's about money. Not only are they a host city, not only do they get some big matches, that's where the U.S. men's national team will play their first group game, right at SoFi. However, come July, out of the chaos that will be the field of 48, it will be down to two teams. We'll be on primetime television. In New Jersey, as MetLife, the ACL killer, will host the World Cup final. I've seen the memes. I understand everything. MetLife, I implore you, do not just change to natural grass for FIFA. Keep natural grass for the NFL as well. Players will thank you. Fans will thank you. Ligaments will definitely thank you. It's a wise move to get everybody prepared and make sure that come that fateful night in July 2026, you'll have the grass and everything just right for that match.
So let's talk really quick about last year's stuff was all in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the stadiums were within like a 20-mile radius of each other. Uh, FIBA has done with stuff for this one. They got things spread out a little bit with 16 host cities, and they're
Mm-hmm.
divided into three different regions. Let's talk east. They've got Miami, Atlanta, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and Toronto. Um, Sir, none of those areas, other than I believe, does New York have a team, normal team? Do they have a place that is really set? Because I do know in the West Side they will play at SoFi. They will play in
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco. Lumen Field is going to be a spot in Seattle and Vancouver, and it's interesting seeing some of these team names and where these host cities are going to be setting up shop for some of these games.
Oh yeah, and the thing about with FIFA, they love the big stadia. So you see in New York, it's really going to be New Jersey at MetLife, while you have the New York Red Bulls play nearby in Harrison at Red Bull Arena, and NYCFC play at Yankee Stadium. You want the huge attendances, so MetLife, obvious choice. Foxborough, Gillette Stadium, Boston, obvious choice because of all the matches the U.S. have played there, record crowds going back to the early days of Major League Soccer. Toronto, probably some modifications made to Rogers Stadium, but knowing that that's really the big place where it's going to be because you don't want to rely entirely on BMO Field unless they up the capacity. I like that they got some of the major hotbeds and in areas of MLS teams. So right choices, right experience with the Stadia. It was a good mix in there.
You bring up MLS, and so one final question with this: do you think with this 2026 Viva, what they are doing, bringing it to the United States, and not just the United States, there is one in Toronto, one in Vancouver, and then you've got Guadalajara,
Yep.
Mexico City, and Monterrey. So,
Yep.
is this going to help out what MLS and us getting some more not other nationality players into the MLS and them to see what the United States has to offer?
Absolutely. Because even with you looked at the World Cup just a couple years ago in Argentina, Lionel Messi, now in MLS with Inter Miami, joined by Luis Suarez and Jordi Alba. We've had a lot of history with big names, Thierry Henry, David Beckham. We get in the draw. Plus, for the lead up to this, the Club World Cup in 2025, just over a year and a half from now, going to be held in the US as the warm up tournament. MLS is going to get a huge boost from there, especially with the presence of the Sounders who will be in that tournament. They qualified. Inter Miami setting up to win CONCACAF Champions League, looking to get that spot to qualify. What happened in 94 set up MLS. I personally think, and I've talked with Sean Garmer about this for years now, if MLS wants to combine with the Canadian Premier League, with Liga MX in Mexico to create a North American soccer pyramid, the MLS and the World Cup, it's going to be a huge boon towards that. There was already talk about it being in place by 2026. Less likely now, but once people see the talent from the US, from players playing in Europe in an MLS, from other teams, other countries with MLS ties, that's going to provide that boost. And we might get that United League by 2030, or by the time the US hosts their next World Cup, which, if you look at the math, is probably going to be as early as 2038. Something to
Well,
look out for.
yeah, it's going to be crazy, and what these guys are doing, I think, hosting the is going to bring in a lot more of these national players, and that we're seeing that with the shift of even in the MLB and seeing the shift of Japanese influence players coming. We've always had the Dominican and the Mexican and Venezuelan,
Mm-hmm.
South American players coming,
Yeah,
but
because you
now
have
we're
the
start
Serie del Caribe, the Caribbean series going on
right.
right now in Miami. So, of course.
Yeah, and and now you're seeing more of those Asian descent. I think that's where the Little League World Series has blossomed the idea of these players coming to the United States and playing for said New York Yankees, said Boston Red Sox, Tampa Bay. I mean, you look at Ichiro and what they've done. So
Mm-hmm.
crazy to see what these sports do in changing things up. So let's direct ourselves turn and head back to Las Vegas for a second. And I think this was a little bit of a planning scheme, but Live Golf is getting ready to tee off in 3 days. On Thursday, they tee off in Las Vegas for their first United States tournament of the year. Uh, Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Las Vegas.
Smart move to have the tournament final on Saturday. So everybody come for the golf, stay for the Super Bowl and the party. Plus, what better way to introduce the season and for this tournament? John Rahm, fresh off of coming to Live, what does he do? He leads his team, Legion 13, to their first ever team win in Mayakoba. Very well done. And you already had a semi rare instance, a playoff between Sergio Garcia, the Fireballs, Joaquin Neiman, a Torquay. That went a couple playoff holes. Unfortunately, because the CW is the CW, especially here, I couldn't see the ending of that because they turned it mid playoff hole for some reason. So you're already building up drama. You've already got your star players performing. Liv couldn't have asked for any better setup than this going to Vegas this week.
So with that being said, I'm going to ask you, who is your favorite going into it? Now you brought it up with the changes and John Rahm showing up now, Tyrell Hatton with this one, and also Caleb Surratt, who was one of those players that was starting to climb up that ladder, United States player. Are they the team to beat in Las Vegas again for back to back team championships?
It's happened before. I wouldn't put it past them to happen again. And especially with an event like this, I would normally go with the tried and true four aces. However, with the changes that four aces made this year, I think they could make a push for a podium finish, but I think it's Legion 13's to lose because while you had a great overall for the individual, for the team, someone like Legion is going to want to come in and distance themselves just a little bit. But don't be surprised for another performance sneakily out west. Maybe Rippers GC, maybe coming up towards the podium themselves. That could be a sleeper team. I might pick them and live fantasy for this week. I might.
You said the team of the four aces. You look at that team, Varner and Dustin Johnson, and what they are doing. Patrick Reed, who is
Mm-hmm.
at the top of his game too. I love that team, but how do you go against John Rahm and what he has done the last almost 5.5 years on the PGA Tour?
Exactly. You really don't. And courses like in Vegas and everything, they're made for him. And the fact that if you can get a great Thursday score, you're going to see a lot of movement on the pylon. But if you can be a 2, 3 shot lead, you're not going to necessarily coast. But it sets up very easily. And then you can just focus on being well enough to count for your team's score Friday going into Saturday. And if you have that ease, you're setting up for a great week.
And like you said, it is happening at the Las Vegas Country Club. They're in Las Vegas. It is a par 70 course, just short of 7,100 yards. So it plays quite well for the long hitters. Is
Mm-hmm.
proved if you're a long hitter, scores will be quite low. And looking at how they have set up this course, they only have two holes in the 500s. Uh, and go figure, the leadoff hole, a par five, 550 yards to start, and then you get to 15, another par five, 571. Very reachable for a couple of those long players to get there in three.
Absolutely. Those are two of your main holes that, and if you've watched Live, you'll know what I'm talking about. Those are going to be two of your green ones. And especially if you start out a green, get another hole that's green, maybe one after that that's yellow. Now you've got 2, 3 hole stretches to where you can be 4, 5, 6 under par, knowing that those are coming up if you don't start off as well. Starting off hot, staying hot. Those are going to be the holes to watch.
I think the other one that you would have to look at that is probably going to be players taking very big stabs at because of where they move, the tee box around, and that has to be 13, as it is the shortest par four on the course at 370, and that's the early setup. So you look at some of these guys that can hit the ball a long way, could easily be a drivable green if possible.
Mm-hmm. Very drivable, or the worst, reaching into another green right there. So you're going green and then another green, yellow, very low scores. And if you're lucky to start off on 13, even better for you.
Sir, I think they have tea times already set. I'm not 100%, but they must have to have tea times already set up. I have not been able to find any tea times of what time they are starting in Las Vegas.
Usually, how a live tournament works is around 1 p.m. Eastern, so about 10 a.m. Pacific. And that's the thing. There's no set tee times. Everybody starts on
It's
the
a
course
shot.
at once.
It's a
Yep.
shotgun start. Yes.
Shotgun start. 3 players per hole out on the course. It's probably going to be tweaked a bit now that you have 52 as compared to 48. So I've got to double check those changes. But the shotgun starts, how everybody's out there, this is just going to add to it. And I'm telling you, YouTube, the CW, Live Golf Plus, if you're in Vegas, it's going to be another part of the party. Go out, watch some of the best, have a good time, see some great golf. You're going to love it.
I Like I said a minute ago, I think my favorite team has to be the Legion, Legion 13. You also got to look at the Crushers, but your favorite golf live team name, sir? Does it have to be the Grange Goats? Is it the
It had
Range Goats?
it as much as I love Torquay and how they took ownership from Torque after the first season, the Range Goats with the goat head logo, pink background. I'm like, I love the Rippers, I love the Aussies, but the Range Goats, oh, chef's kiss. Perfect team name. Perfect team name.
Uh, that is so priceless with that. It is funny. You look at that team name and it's just it makes you laugh when you see it. So
Hmm.
it is quite amusing in that one. So trying to get a score update really quick from Lewiston High School. I believe we're at halftime of that game. Lakeland in against Lewiston, as Randy is calling that one. It does flash up on the screen finally. Lewiston leading Lakeland right now 36-19. So knowing that this is just a halftime, sir, you and I might have a little bit of a break before we have stuff going on a little bit later. So
Oh yeah. Randy was good enough to let me know when he's not being rancid. He's like, I'm calling the game. Got a little bit of a break, which works for me. I get to do my requisite outfit change, grab a little bit of a snack, rest my voice because I'm
there
probably
you
going to be
go.
screaming at him again. So this helps me in a few ways.
All right, we got a couple more things on the national level. Then we'll hit on the high school level with what's going on. First of all, how about the first NASCAR race is in the books for the year? Denny Hamlin comes away with the win at the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum. Led for a third of the, I want to say he led 58 of 151. So right out of a third of the race in that one. Uh, Great way to kick off the NASCAR season.
And not just for Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, Truex Jr., Hamlin, all of the contingent of Joe Gibbs Racing. If you looked at the final 2/3 of that race like I did, all of them were hovering around at the top half.
Mhm.
I feel a bit bad for my boy Bubba Wallace. He was right there, had a great restart after one of the last cautions, going to the last lap, fifth place, got bumped, went into the turn and dropped to 12th. My heart sank as I saw that. I think it was right into turn 3, right near the end. That was the one thing that just didn't make it perfect for me. And I swear, one of these years, I'm glad that they were able to move it. Unfortunately, it means we missed out on the qualifying because of the terrible weather going on in Southern
Mhm.
California. Everybody in that part of the country, stay safe, listen to the warnings. It is bad. But at the same time, still had a good atmosphere, lightly attended, but it was still a great race. I got to make it out there one of these years.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've been wanting to try to do is even get to Vegas to watch one. Vegas would be the closest one for us to go check out, and we were talking about that the other day. I was with a buddy of mine. We were talking about the cost of making that trip and what it is, but it would sure be good. A couple of the other finishers, Kyle Busch, who started in fifth, ended up second. Ryan Blaney in third, Joey Logano, who was sitting right next to Denny Hamlin at the start of the
Mm-hmm.
race in second, finished in fourth place, and then Kyle Larson uh, finished in fifth. So you look at the next couple of races as everybody is now traveling cross country, that's what they are doing. We'll have a couple of duels on Thursday, February 15th, the Blue Green vacation duels. And then that week of it is the Daytona 500 on February 18th in Daytona. And I love watching the trials for this one. And it's just because, the all of these teams are at a new. They are
Mm-hmm.
what they're trying to prove of what they did in that off season. And a lot of those guys do a ton of testing and you watch what these teams did. I believe it was last year, it might have been the year before, is the year that I took Bubba Wallace to be that taking that next step. And so it's watching the pregame, what we would call pregame, but the early staging races for Daytona that really proves what these guys can do.
Absolutely. And the fact that you're on such a grand stage, not just with all the Renovations completed a few years ago with the speedway, the track perfect, everything lining up. It's like you get the best possible way to start your season and really say, all right, this is where we are on these tracks, and we know we're coming back again. All this is what we have to do, what we have to tweak. And as you mentioned, figuring that out in the trials just ahead of the main race makes for a fantastic weekend, great atmosphere, horrible traffic getting down there, but worth it when you get there.
Yeah, 1,000%, and that's one thing that I look forward to after Super Bowl's over this week. We celebrate a little Fat Tuesday and Mardi Gras this next week, and after that, we dive into NASCAR, and it is 1,000%. It's go time with that one, and you look at that schedule after you leave Daytona, you jump right into Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is one of the biggest races of the year before they head back out west to Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. And you get your early southern swing, get your feet really wet, then heading out west. Few different tracks, different banking, but sampling something not too difficult before you start getting into the early meat of the season post Vegas and as you get into April.
We got a few more minutes. Real quick, we're going to hit a little bit on the bowling, the PBA bowling. I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of this. And listen, we talked about one of the biggest things to see the group of guys that made the final five for the U.S. Open has to be by far. And they talked to Randy Peterson about this. They talked to a lot of different people. Has to be the best final five step ladder ever in PBA bowling. You have the number one bowler in the world with Jason Belmonte. You have EJ Tackett, who was the MVP this last year, Kyle Troop, Anthony Simonson, and Bill O'Neill, who's been doing it for years and still at a high level. You look at those five names and you go, oh my God. And let me tell you, I watched this and it was oh my Lord with that one. The number one guy in the world, Jason Belmonte, struggled on the TV pair, just couldn't get going. But happy to see Kyle Troop come away with his first U.S. Open championship. I want to say it was his third major, but to see him really take game number two and just run away with it, just unbelievable.
Now, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to see that this weekend. All of my other stuff going on. But as you mentioned, when you have got the best of the best, and this is the one thing about the step ladder, just because you're the number one, it's not a lock in any means. And the fact that you have that level of talent all around, it was really anybody's to win. Kudos for Kyle for taking it.
Yeah, big payday for him too. He ends up taking home $100,000. But you looked at what all of those other guys did. EJ Tackett, Bill O'Neill, both playing a very deep ball. They do throw with their thumb in the ball. Then you've got Anthony Simonson, Jason Belmonte, both of them no thumb, along with Kyle Troop. So everybody kind of lofting the ball and pushing it and throwing deep, for the exception of Anthony Simonson. And he played outside with it being a USBC tournament, not a PBA sanctioned tournament, which is still part of the tour and all that. He was able
Mm-hmm.
to use a bowling ball that is older than 2 years old. And so he was able to use a ball that was manufactured about 4 years ago and just couldn't keep the ball on the lane. So it was kind of crazy watching how all of these guys were playing the lanes differently.
And that's interesting because with the older balls, and I've noticed how they've changed the lanes as a little bit more oil, a little slick, closer to the pins than usual. So if you're lofting it, the ball doesn't have the time to get the traction onto the drier parts of the lane. Then all of a sudden it goes flying. So that automatically, with those older balls, gets you the difficulties. Whereas with more guys bowling without the thumb, the newer balls, more designed to loft, get that resistance in the air. As you get to the slicker part of the lane, they would also turn easier as well, going towards the head pin.
I know I can't do it. I will make sure I do it next week, but we've got to congratulate our buddy co-host Randy Isbell. Had another 300 on Thursday. Crazy to watch him. I missed. I was on the other end of the house, so I did not get to see all of his shots on how he carried or anything like that. But great game, and he was able to just just crush it. The team took 27 points, so I mean, huge out of 30. So what he did was great. And with that being said, last night he was on again through the front 10 last night in game number 2 of the Pro Bowl for our NFL league. So uh, he is just bowling lights out right now, and hats off to Randy. We'll celebrate him a little bit more here this next week, but congratulations, sir, on your 300. So all right, I have a little bit of local, and then I'm going to throw at you whatever you want to chat about. One local thing, some local things, high school for Clarkson. uh, Lots of stuff going on right now. We're down to our final week of the regular season before we start hitting the playoff push. And your Clarkson Bantams, they are just right now unbeatable. Right now, 19-0, 8-0 in district play with their win against Pullman on Friday night. They do capture the district championship, regular season championship, with their going 8-0 right now. They've got two more matchups. They will be at home tomorrow. That's why we're doing the show tonight. We will be hosting in East Valley. Last time they played East Valley, it was not pretty. It was almost a 60-point win for the girls. It's probably
Oof.
going to be that same way. And then we're on the road to host in Shadle Park on Friday. As far as the boys, they ran up against a team that has just been playing so well compared to the last couple seasons. Lost to Rogers 63-49. Rogers right now 7th in the RPI rankings in that one. Um, and then they end up losing to Pullman. But let's talk about Pullman. Pullman, that team, they are number 9 in the state right now in the 2A. What they
Wow.
were doing, the Clarkson Bantams, they were down 10 after the first quarter, crawled back into it, and by the end of the third quarter, Clarkson only trailed by 3, and you could feel the momentum of Clarkson could push up against these big lineup, as they've got Pullman's got some big players between Champ Milwaukee, Austin Hunt, a 6'10" guy, Milwaukee who's 6'4", but Champ just kind of turned things up in the fourth quarter, and Pullman outscored the Bantams 26-7 in the fourth
Oh.
quarter. And so Clarkson ends up losing to Pullman 66-44 on Friday. So again, tomorrow night, senior night, as they welcome in East Valley. And then we'll have a makeup game with Rogers on Thursday. And then we will wrap things up on the regular season on Friday as the team travels back up to Spokane Valley and take on Shadle Park. So, all right, sir. We talked a little bit of Aussie. Do you want to dive back into Aussie, because there's some little bit of news going on, especially with the Swans and who they're taking for their captain.
Now, I haven't heard this news with the Swans, so this is intriguing with me. But with a team like that, they were able to do everything and finally give Buddy Franklin his retirement and everything. I'm kind of curious because I've seen some rumblings a bit about what's happening in Geelong. My dogs, we've got our leadership group set, and we've got a lot of young guys that we picked in the draft setting up for some great debuts. But I'm wondering, what are you hearing with Sydney? Who do they pick as their guy for their captain?
Well, the name that kept throwing out was Callum Mills, but what is
Mm-hmm.
interesting is with him having the surgery back in September last year, is he going to be 100% to start the season, dealing with that rotator cuff and trying to explain to some of these kids at school how physical these guys play. It is there's no padding to help protect them.
Mm-mm.
You're lucky if some of these players wear a mouth guard in this game.
Yeah, and for something like that with a rotator cuff, especially at his key position, I think the Swans would be wise, keep him a bit more measured. I don't think he's had a full preseason by design. I don't necessarily know if they're going to bring him down to the VFL to start the season, the Victorian Football League, which is the Aussie rules kind of minor league system, if you will, for the different teams. They might with him, but I don't know. For something as serious as a rotator cuff in September, week one, that's too much of a stretch for me. Too much of a stretch for me.
Yeah, and you hit on a few of the teams, as far as Geelong and following with them. I think it has to be Cam Guthrie and what he can do after having a very disappointing season last year with him getting hurt. How is he going to play coming into this game? And watching some of this new youth at the very end of the season start making their play time and getting some play. And I'm very impressed to see and excited to see how this youth movement changes things up in Geelong. And hopefully they finally have the stadium finished up as they've been working on that darn stadium for what now? A year and a half?
I mean, fingers crossed with a place like GMHBA, you never know. I mean, especially with everything else going on in Melbourne, you're probably still going to be playing a bit more at the MCG, which will be kind of good for us, but that's beside the point. I mean, we dealt with everything at our practice facility for Witten Oval, so I completely get you. And as far as with my dogs, we got Bont, we got Trelaw, trying to keep our ruck situation straight with Tim English, wondering what we're going to do with Jordan Sweet, but I'm hoping Bevo doesn't do Bevo things and move everybody around just for the sake of it, because if we can put things together early, we can make another push for the 8, maybe fulfill expectations, and finally get into the top 4. I don't want to say that yet to jinx us, but we could be right there. So I'm getting excited about this season.
Yeah, 100% excited, and seeing what all of these guys can do, and watching the young group. That's what I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
about in Geelong and what they are capable of doing. So, well, sir, floor is yours. You got a couple minutes. You get anything else you want to hit on?
I want to tie a bow on what I mentioned at the beginning of the show. We talked
I
a bit
didn't.
about,
I didn't wear a bow tonight.
well, luckily for you, if you had a clip on or anything like that, that would also work.
No.
But I had mentioned early on with the team having an issue with their national government. We talked about big name and big name international players playing in MLS. Enter Miami, going on their big preseason tour. One last supposed Messi versus Ronaldo duel with the Ronaldo Saudi club in Al Nasser didn't come to pass. They've got a game in Tokyo in a couple of days, but they just played in Hong Kong. All of the hype was around seeing Messi, seeing Suarez, seeing Jordi Alba come out, see these guys play in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, they were injured. You had some red flags in a promised training session that was supposed to be an hour and a half, that was only 40 minutes. And when you have people coming from all over the world paying as much as $650 for a ticket to the match, packed stadium 40,000. Yes, Inter Miami beat Hong Kong SC 4-1, but Suarez, dealing with the knee injury, did not play. Messi, originally an adductor, but they said, oh, he's got a hamstring injury, did not play. That announcement with Messi in particular, who was the face of all the advertisements, did not come about until 10 minutes before the match was over. Sponsors are freaking out. Fans are booing, chanting, we want a refund. The Hong Kong government isn't happy because of the effort they put in for tourism and everything else. It's going to be a total mess. So you might see, especially for MLS teams, your higher profile ones on international tours like this one, I think things are going to change going forward. It's not the players' fault, but there were a lot of issues that came about that there's going to be some changes, and I think it's going to be a bit of a bad look for Inter Miami and MLS to at least start the season. So keep an eye on that story because it's not over.
Yeah, it's going to be far from over, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Real quick score update from Lewiston High School. The Lewiston Bengals are leading 54-35. Right at 1 minute left to go in the third quarter, and that one looks like the Bengals should take the win from the Hawks. I want to thank Eric Watkins again, filling in for Mr. Randy Isbell, as you know, busy time of the year with both of us doing sports, and we look forward to next week. Probably going to be a Monday show based on playoff stuff. For us, as I am probably going to be PAing for first round of Clarkson boys action, so we'll do that. But again, we thank Eric Watkins for filling in, and for it has been another busy episode. But for Eric, myself, we will be back next week, and until next time, be safe.